Hello and welcome to this mini masterclass with Kate Stanley. Kate is the Executive Director of Frameworks UK. She's got an amazing CV. She's also worked with the Duchess of Cambridge. She's worked for the think tank IPPR, with Save the Children, and with many other great organisations. So we're really delighted to have Kate with us today. And Frameworks is really making waves at the moment. They're becoming increasingly influential about how organisations talk about their issues, whether that be child obesity or international development. So it's really great to have Kate with us today. Thanks for joining us, Kate. And my first question to you is, what are your top 3 tips for how we can reframe our issue to create change?
Hi Ollie, it's great to be here. My top 3 tips are, first of all, know what you're up against. So understand how people think about your issue. Second, stand for something. So talk about what it is that you want, what needs to happen and why. And thirdly, repeat until you are bored to tears. And then persuade others to join in with you too.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kate. And so your first tip was know what you're up against. What do you mean by that?
So if we want to change things for the better, we need to win hearts and minds. And so to win hearts and minds, you need to know what people think about your issue. So people are not blank slates. We all have existing ways of thinking about the world. And you need to understand what are the most common or the dominant ways of thinking about your issue, because that's the cultural, that's the cognitive soup that your message is landing in. It's not landing into an empty space, into a vacant mind. It's landing into a soup of pre-existing ideas. So good research will really help you understand what's in that soup, what you're up against, what you need to be careful about, but it'll also tell you what else is out there that you can use to build support. An example of this that we experienced when I was at NSPCC, through framing research, we came to understand that people were generally really fatalistic about child abuse. They saw it as a fact of life. So any message from us at NSPCC asking people to support our prevention work was seen through this lens. And the thinking would then be, why spend money on something you can't change? If child abuse is inevitable, why spend money trying to prevent it? So our message would fail. So instead, our messages needed to be explicit that child abuse could be prevented and then seek support for that work. That way the message would work much better.
Really powerful example, thank you. So your second piece of advice was, you've got to stand for something. So tell us a bit more about that.
So we all spend, all of us in the social sector, driven by our missions, we spend a huge amount of energy talking about what we're against, what we don't want, and why other people are wrong. And that's because we are full of passion and often insight, and we can see what needs to happen and are frustrated by what's going on. But if we concentrate our energy on talking about what we're against rather than what we're for, we're likely to be inadvertently reinforcing the frames or the narratives that we're trying to dispute, that we're disagreeing with. So there's an example inspired by George Lakoff and his book. His book was called Don't Think of an Elephant. So Ollie, if I asked you now what you were thinking of, is there any chance an elephant just wandered through your mind?
Yes, a big white elephant, yes.
Mm-hmm. So every time we try to rebut an argument by saying, don't do this or don't do that, we actually trigger the frame it is that we're trying to replace. And once you've triggered a frame, it's very, very hard to replace it with another frame. So you've just made your job much harder. This applies to that classic myth busting. Every time we try to bust a myth, what we're doing often is reinforcing that myth by repeating it. So instead of talking about what we're against, it's really important we spend time, and we might need to do that sometimes, but it's really important we do spend time talking about what it is that we're for, what we want to see happen.
Really interesting, really interesting. And your final point, which I think I get, was repeat, repeat, repeat. So tell us a bit more about that.
So this cultural soup that exists is full of really powerful and enduring ideas. They've been around for a long time, repeated often through generations. So if we want to cut through with our messages, we have to stick with them. We have to be prepared to be bored by them and repeat them again and again. We have to find what works and stick with it. We should be finding lots of different creative, imaginative ways to say the same thing, through different images, music, visuals, bringing it to life, but essentially repeating the same core message. So that also means it's really valuable when organisations join together to reinforce one another's messages. And rather than necessarily focusing on the distinctiveness of their voice, which can be important, especially for fundraising, but sometimes to come together and reinforce one another's message can be a really powerful force for change.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kate. Brilliant answers. As you know, we're asking everyone who joins us for a mini masterclass to recommend one piece of watching or listening or reading. So what's your recommendation?
So this is a 5-minute masterclass. Our sister organisation in the States, Frameworks Institute, the CEO there, Nat Kendall-Taylor, does a 13-minute masterclass in his TEDx talk. It's called Words Change Minds, and in that Nat explains framing theory and its origins in cultural and psychological anthropology, and he talks about how you can use words to reframe your issue and create social change.
Great recommendation. Thanks, Kate. I watched Nat's TED talk again this morning. It's really, really good. So strongly recommend it. Thanks again, Kate. Thanks everyone for joining us. It's Kate Stanley from Frameworks UK. And if you've enjoyed this video, please do share it. And if you have any questions, just send them in. Thanks very much.